Scott Woodward out as LSU's athletic director. How did it happen? Who's next? We got all the answers. Locked on LSU. Here we go.
You are Locked On LSU, your daily podcast on the LSU Tigers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Okay, let's get it. It is Locked on LSU, your team every day. I'm your host, Matt Moscona. Thanks so much for making us your first listen. We're free, available wherever you get great podcasts, of course, on YouTube as well. So please subscribe. As always, one of the fastest ways to help us grow is by leaving your comments below. So thank you sincerely for that. Welcome to all of our viewers on the Gulf Coast Sports and Entertainment Network. This episode is brought to you by Mazda. Like our players, we sweat every detail because when you make every move count, pulling off the unexpected is only the beginning. Stay tuned later for highlights in this week's Moving the Game Forward. Mazda, move and be moved. I am in my 19th season covering LSU football. I cannot ever recall a week like this. And that's saying something because I covered Les Miles and Ed Ogeron. Brian Kelly was fired on Sunday in a very rash decision. LSU owes him a $53 million buyout. The governor of the state has interjected himself in that conversation regarding the buyout because of his disdain for now former LSU Athletics Director Scott Woodward. And in what was very clearly a coup that was going to be executed, it was just a matter of when. Scott Woodward is now out as LSU's athletics director. Governor Jeff Landry on Wednesday, no doubt you've heard, we talked about it here, made some inflammatory statements during a press conference. In no uncertain terms, said Scott Woodward will not pick the next head coach. I had the opportunity on my radio show on Thursday to interview Governor Landry, and I asked several follow-ups to that, whether the governor had the autonomy to fire the athletic director, whether the governor would be okay with paying Scott Woodward's buyout. More on that in just a bit as well. And he consistently deflected those comments, saying that ultimately it's the Board of Supervisors' decision, not his. But it doesn't take a genius to figure out what is happening here. Governor Jeff Landry has his agenda, and he is ramming it down everyone's throat at the expense of LSU athletics. I am going to shortly spell out exactly what happened. I'm going to tell you everything I know. Some stuff that people have whispered about, some stuff people have been vague about. I'm just going to tell you because the hay's in the barn now. Scott Woodward's fired. LSU's going to pay him a bunch of money. I'll get into all those details. I'm going to give you all the details. I'm going to tell you what I know. Well, I mean, what does it matter at this point? Guy's been fired. They're moving in a different direction. And then you can make your decisions. You can decide if I'm credible or not. It's up to you. I don't really care. You can decide if you believe me. But I'll remind you, I broke the news of Brian Kelly getting fired. I've been telling you for I don't even know how long now about whether or not Scott Woodward would be making the next hire. How do you know who the next coach is going to be if you don't know who's going to be making the next hire? I've been telling you in no uncertain terms. Like Scott Woodward wasn't going to make it. This has been obvious. Ross Dellinger hat tip. Literally on the phone getting the news about Woodward being let go, and Dellinger broke it. So hat tip to Ross. Broke the news that Scott Woodward was going to be let go. Short time later, LSU issued the press release making it official that Scott Woodward is no longer the athletics director. Scott Woodward issued a statement via LSU Sports Information. So Michael Bonnet, LSU's Sports Information Director, issued a letter from Scott Woodward, which begins, "Dear Tiger Nation, is with a heavy heart, but also my typical optimism that today is my last day serving as your Director of Athletics." He talks about growing up a few miles from campus, attending Catholic High, enrolling at LSU, his 4 years as a student, leading him to government, public relations, all the way throughout his career. And then finally back to Baton Rouge. He's very proud of his accomplishments and says, finishing, "Our university will always hold a special place in my heart, and I will never be too far from LSU. Nanette, Michael, Josh, and I wish the Tigers nothing but the best. Go Tigers. Scott. Let me be very clear. This is a horrific decision rammed down the throats of the Board of Supervisors by a governor who is acting in a very vindictive and irresponsible manner. I like Jeff Landry, personally. I do. Met him a few times. He and I spoke on the phone privately on Thursday morning. He came on my radio show, very generous with his time. I believe he's a good man, and he's done a lot of good things. He's a smart man. He was our attorney general. He's a smart man. But this is an absurd abuse of power. This is the governor of the state of Louisiana being vindictive to force out the athletics director and ultimately influencing the head football coach hire. I don't care what your politics are. If you love LSU football, you should be pissed off about this. You should be. Because this is an absurd overreach of power and influence. And my hope is it doesn't have a tremendously negative effect. Because listen, I know where a lot of people stand with Scott Woodward. A lot of people love to point out, well, he got A&M saddled with a giant buyout for Jimbo, and now he did the same thing with Brian Kelly, does bad contracts. Let's get real. Let's say this again. Say it really slowly for those in the back who don't seem to want to listen. Scott Woodward didn't saddle Jimbo Fisher, Texas A&M with Jimbo Fisher's buyout. Ross Bjork did. Start reading around. National columnists are getting hip to it, and they're publishing it. Scott Woodward signed Jimbo Fisher to a 10-year, $75 million deal, which by the end of that deal would have been worth $7.5 million per year, which is a pittance relative to what major coaches get right now. Middle of the pack of the Southeastern Conference. Scott Woodward was the athletic director at LSU. Ross Bjork, who had replaced him, gave Jimbo Fisher the contract extension with the ridiculous buyout that A&M got saddled with when they fired Jimbo, not Scott Woodward. That's number one. Number two, Brian Kelly. Okay? Didn't work. It would be so hypocritical to sit here today and criticize Scott Woodward for that hire when it didn't work, when we were all praising the coup of him hiring away, guy had been successful everywhere he'd been, never been fired. Notre Dame's winningest coach ever. Fine. You want to split hairs about that? Okay, lay that at his feet. He also hired Jay Johnson. Nobody was beating down Jay's door. 2 national titles in 3 years. He hired Kim Mulkey. And you could say, oh, anybody could hire Kim Mulkey. Really? Okay. Can anybody justify spending $3 million a year on a women's basketball coach? Who's going to go shake the trees to get that money? You know who will? A guy that knows every tree to shake. That's Scott Woodward. Oh, you want to fundraise for facilities? You want to do things covertly, tactfully, unlike the governor? That's Scott Woodward. Trace him back to Washington. He hired Steve Sarkisian. Pretty good coach, right? Wasn't Texas Steve Sarkisian at the time. USC hired him away. Who did he get? Chris Peterson from Boise. Oversaw the renovation of Husky Stadium. Did so good there, he got the A&M job. Hires Jimbo. Hires Buzz Williams. Facility renovations at A&M. LSU brings him home. Brings in Brian Kelly. Brings in Jay Johnson. Brings in Kim Mulkey. Fundraising. Doubles. Does an incredible job at LSU. But the athletic director had a bone to pick, an axe to grind. Excuse me. The governor had a bone to pick, an axe to grind, and stuck his nose where it didn't belong. And now, unfortunately, LSU is going to be worse off for it because one of the most respected athletic directors in college athletics, who's a Baton Rouge native, an LSU alum, loves the school as much as you and I do, and would have stayed here for the rest of his career, is unemployed. And not only is he unemployed, but LSU now has to spend $6.5 million to buy out the final 3.5 years of his contract. So tell me, Governor Landry, how offended you were about the taxpayers footing the bill for Brian Kelly's buyout. And now here we are, owing Scott Woodward $6.5 million. Who's footing the bill for that? I bet the only thing you hear from the governor is private donors. No kidding, really? Because that's how it's always done. One of the most disingenuous, absurd, self-indulgent, self-serving, vindictive moments I can remember in a program that has a long history of embarrassing moments. Unbelievable. And unfortunately, it's too believable. Welcome to Louisiana. So how did it come to this? I'm going to tell you everything I know. We'll do it next. Locked in LSU, your team every day. This episode is brought to you by Mazda's Moving the Game Forward. For those who believe it's not just about playing the game, it's about redefining it. There are moments that do more than put points on the board. They move crowds, they move culture, and they keep moving the game forward. This week's moment that moved the game forward, well, how about a Jace Thomas punt block for a safety? I'm not sure that the game got much better than that. Maybe Harlan Berry touchdown in the first half. There weren't many when LSU played Texas A&M. But when you follow what moves you, the unexpected is only the beginning. And just like there's more to every highlight, there's more to a Mazda vehicle. Mazda, move and be moved. A lot of people have asked and wondered how it got to this. Why is Jeff Landry so opposed to Scott Woodward? Well, I'm going to tell you. First of all, they're on opposite ends of the political spectrum. So that's strike one. Jeff Landry is a staunch Republican. Scott Woodward is a Democrat. So he has that already one blemish against him. And you might say, what's the big deal? Plenty of people have different political allegiances. Why does that matter in an athletic department? And you'd be right to ask that question, but you'd have to ask it to a vindictive governor who has his hit list through LSU, through LSU's entire system right now that he's just going through. Back in January, it was legal counsel Winston DeQueer who was blown out. William Tate, the university president, basically told, go get a job because you're not going to be employed here anymore. He's now at Rutgers. And Scott Woodward was next in the crosshairs. And I can't help but wonder who's next. But the thing that really pushed all of this into overdrive is what happened this past spring. And Ross Dellinger wrote a little bit about this at Yahoo Sports today, but I'm going to tell you actually what, like the whole story of what happened. And anybody can certainly come at me, you can fact check me. I'm very confident in telling you what I know. So Lee Mallett is a wealthy guy in Southwest Louisiana who happens to be a Jeff Landry supporter, donor, benefactor. Again, on the LSU Board of Supervisors. Lee Mallett, after this most recent basketball season, wanted Will Wade to be rehired by LSU. Of course, Will Wade was the McNeese coach. And so Lee Mallett, who's a supporter of Jeff Landry's, went to the governor and said, I would really like for Scott Woodward to fire Matt McMahon, hire Will Wade, rehire Will Wade. By the way, the same Will Wade that Scott Woodward fired. And apparently there was an objection about buyout, but Lee Mallett, as I'm told, had agreed to pay it. Pay the buyout for Matt McMahon, bring Will Wade over. That would have funded it. And Scott Woodward then defiantly just said, I'm not doing that. I'm not hiring Will Wade. Which, by the way, is 100% the right decision. Listen, I love Will Wade. When Will Wade was a coach at LSU, it was great to me. He was hella entertaining to cover. No doubt. But man, LSU and Scott Woodward absolutely did the right thing. The NCAA was using the LSU football sanctions as leverage to get Will Wade. All they wanted was their pound of flesh with Will Wade. And so they put off sanctions against LSU football for years when that case should have been closed because they were trying to get sanctions against Will Wade. They were trying to get their pound of flesh with Wade. And so LSU, Scott Woodward, had a decision to make. Are you willing to sacrifice Will Wade to preserve football? And it was 100% the right decision, what she made. They salvaged football and they sacrificed Will Wade. So they fired Wade to prevent football from getting hammered by the NCAA Infractions Committee. It was the right decision to protect football. And so Will Wade gets fired again. Think the world of Will Wade, and it sucks. He was just about 2 years before his time, man. If Will Wade had come along during the NIL era, he'd still be cooking, and it'd be awesome. But there's no sensible reason to rehire a coach you fired. With good reason, by the way. And the governor didn't like that because he doesn't like being told no. Clearly, you can tell. And that only further stoked the fire. And from that moment, Scott Woodward's days were numbered. And now here we are. You have a respected athletic director who has done incredible things. He's hired great coaches. He's made LSU profitable. He was forward thinking in the revenue share era. I had a conversation 3 years ago about how LSU is already preparing for the inevitability of revenue share and what that would do for their budget. Scott Woodward is very good at his job. And he got fired because the governor had an axe to grind. Tell me where that makes sense. It doesn't. And now, because of what's happened over the last 36 hours, where the governor was grandstanding at a press conference, went on the McAfee show, came on my show, and continued to dig his heels in the ground about the silly buyout conversation, which, again, he's wrong. He continues to say, by the letter of the law, the state of Louisiana, the taxpayers of Louisiana are liable for Brian Kelly's buyout, but never, there's not one public example of when taxpayer dollars were used to fund a buyout, not one. He continues to hammer that as the justification for this decision. He has forced the Board of Supervisors, Scott Ballard, who is a Tulane supporter, but is the president of the LSU Board of Supervisors now because the governor appointed him. And the governor has that right to do, by the way. I'm not in any way saying he doesn't. He's the governor, this governor, the last governor, and every governor prior appoints the members of the Board of Supervisors at LSU. And they're the board over the LSU system and the two hospitals. Like, okay, he has every right to do that. And he appoints them. And so he wields major influence over them. And so in this situation, without a full-time university president, the board has effectively fired Scott Woodward. And Scott Woodward has $3.5 million left, 3.5 years and $6.5 million left on his contract. So LSU is going to buy out the remainder of Scott Woodward's contract. Within 24 hours of this governor creating a total storm about Brian Kelly's buyout, he is going to force a decision now that's going to put LSU on the hook for $6.5 million for the athletic director. Hypocritical at best, something way worse than that at worst. Absolutely absurd. Louisiana at its finest, or maybe at its worst, however you want to phrase it semantically. But this is just a terrible day. A great leader, a respected leader, a successful athletic director from Baton Rouge at his alma mater who loved this place, forced out by a vindictive governor, and now you wonder, who might you get? Who's going to want this job? Who's going to want this job? Who's going to want to come here to work at a place where you don't know if this governor is going to overreach and cause you to be ineffective at doing your job? And subsequently, what head coach is going to want to come work here for a boss he doesn't know who could eventually be overrun by a meddling governor? The rest of the country is looking at this laughing right now because of this situation. Tact matters in these things. Governors wield influence. Bobby Jindal prevented Les Miles from getting fired after the Ole Miss debacle in 2009. And really influenced LSU to extend Les Miles. Make sure they kept him after 2011 and into 2012 when the Arkansas interest had come aboard. The point is, governors always wield their influence, but do it tactfully. Don't do it in a manner that's going to embarrass the university and harm the athletic department, which unfortunately is what Jeff Landry has done here. So who is next? I've got 5 names, and I'm fairly confident, as I've been confident on all these reports I've told you, that it's going to be one of these 5 names. I'll tell you who they are next. Locked on LSU, your team every day. It's almost the weekend, so it's time to look back and crown this week's MVP on Who Delivered, powered by DoorDash. Just like you can win every Saturday with DoorDash Streaks, saving more every time you order. These players delivered when it mattered most. So let's break it down. For the LSU Tigers, how about Harlem Berry? Delivered in a big way. Averaged 7 yards a carry in the first half and had a touchdown. Best rushing performance of his young career. And just like Harlem Berry delivered for the Tigers, DoorDash delivers your Saturdays. With DoorDash Streaks, you save every Saturday you order. So stack it up all season long, and you could save up to $250, including $100 in DoorDash credits. Order this Saturday. Keep the streak alive. Fuel your game day only with DoorDash. Terms apply. Promo period through 11/18. And are brought to you by FanDuel. The NBA is back, and there's no better place to get in on the action than FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Even if you miss the start of the game or you want to ride the hot hand, FanDuel has live bets on everything from who will score next to fourth quarter comebacks. Plus, you can even combine your live bets into a same-game parlay for a shot at bigger payout. It keeps every game exciting, especially when your team's making that late push. Right now, FanDuel is giving new customers $300 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. So head to FanDuel.com, sign up, play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. I'm going to give you 5 names that could end up being LSU's next athletics director. And I think it's pretty evident that this governor already has everything in line. He's the puppet master, and his lackeys are doing his work. They're going to insert Wade Roos as the new university president next week. By the way, I'm told Roos will come over from McNeese. It was very impressive in his interview, and might do a fantastic job. I'm not saying he won't, but this is obviously not a free choice of the board. This is being forced upon them by the governor. So I'm going to give you 5 names to keep an eye on. Verge Osbury is an LSU associate AD who is serving as the interim AD. Verge has applied for this job the last several times that it is open. I think there's a very real question at this point in his career if Verge wants this job. I'm sure there's part of him that wants it because it's his dream job. This also isn't this isn't a great scenario to walk into. Would you want to be the number one taking all the bullets in this situation? Or would you be really good being the number 2, the deputy AD in the role he's been, where you make a really good living and you don't stand out front? But Verge Osbury serving as the interim AD, that's one to keep an eye on. It's very clear to me that there will be a Louisiana influence on this hire, just like the governor's pushing Wade Roos from McNeese to be the new university president. I have every reason to believe from every conversation I've had that this hire will be someone with deep Louisiana ties. So Verge is one, and I'll give you 2 current sitting athletic directors in Louisiana colleges. J.R. Teagues at Southeastern Louisiana is a name that I've heard mentioned to me. Jay is he's fiscally very responsible and does an outstanding job of hiring coaches during his time. He was the baseball coach at Southeastern, moved into the AD role a la Skip Bertman, and he is fiscally responsible. He's a guy that can turn a nickel into a quarter. He's done really a fantastic job. It's a gigantic step up. I wouldn't even be surprised necessarily if J.R. Teagues didn't get the AD job, but was hired in some associate AD role. It's something that certainly could happen. Heath Schroyer is another name to know. I've met Heath Schroyer just once and had a very pleasant experience in meeting him. I can't say I know a ton about him, but he's the AD presently at McNeese. So Wade Roos getting the president's job, most likely. His preference, as I understand, would be to bring Heath Schroyer with him from McNeese to LSU. But again, you're talking about a massive step up if you're going to start managing a $300 million athletic, going from McNeese in the FCS to managing a $300 million athletic department. Hard to imagine that making sense. If you're looking for your two big swings, at the top of the list would be Josh Brooks. So Josh Brooks is currently the athletic director at the University of Georgia. And you might say, why would he leave Georgia for LSU? Well, he's from Hammond. His wife is from the area. He went to LSU. Their families are still here. And as I understand it, his wife would have a longing to get closer to home. So I don't know if LSU will offer the job to Josh Brooks. I do know that he has been contacted because, of course, he's been contacted. He's the most obvious choice. He's a sitting AD at a major university having a ton of success. And in the SEC, it would make so much sense to hire Josh Brooks. But will they offer him the job, or does Jeff Landry already have his guy picked out? That's certainly a consideration. And then the other is Michael Alford. So Alford is currently the athletic director at Florida State. He went to Acadiana High in Lafayette. So you're talking about another guy from Southwest Louisiana, deep ties here, major power for AD presently, who could come. Those are the five. I'll be stunned if it's anyone other than those five. If another name pops up between now and when someone's hired, I'll let you know. But I would assume that we early next week will have word that Wade Roos will be LSU's new university president. Short time after that, one of these men will be hired as the new athletics director at LSU, at which point they can then begin in earnest their search for a new head football coach. All right, that'll do it for us here on Locked On LSU. Please subscribe on your favorite podcast app. Rate us, leave a review. If you're on YouTube, smash that like button, subscribe to the channel, hit the bell so you're notified whenever we post a new video. We're on the Gulf Coast Sports and Entertainment Network as well. So let a friend know that if they love the Tigers, we got you here every single day for Locked On LSU. It's your team every day.